What's going on, everybody? This week we're talking World Cup Pro Draw. Oliver Lang stops by the Spick and Span show and drops some juicy news about the duel. And we take a look at AC Diesel, their struggles, and what's stopping them from being a top pro team. Let's get into it.
Game on.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Paintball Weekly. I'm your host, Ethan Rowe, and this week we're starting with some very exciting news from Oliver Lang and Hormesis. In episode 211 of the Spick and Span show, Oliver shares that the pro players attending the Duel Grand Finale in Thailand this season will be the first eligible pro-ranked duelers. This is going to be an event circuit that consists of 16 players, where both paint and entry are completely covered, all while competing for $20,000 per event. There's also going to be an amateur division where those top 8 competitors will be eligible to join the pro ranks at the next event. The bottom 8 pros will be relegated into the amateurs and forced to compete to earn their spot back in the pro rank. This gets me so excited. Last episode we talked about investing in our community and innovations. This is what we're talking about. The chance to make a name for yourself, the opportunity to be a hero for a day. Shout out to the best paintball documentary. My biggest issue with the relegation system in paintball is that once a team falls, they most often cease to exist. Their best players will get picked away, then the team either folds, or they remain a name only. The European soccer relegation system functions so well because they have huge fan bases, infrastructure, and money. Very few teams in our league have legitimate systems enough to withstand hard times. A solo athlete tournament format is where a relegation system in paintball could function, bringing in new opportunities for solo sponsorships like Colton Doll and Project Paintball, or even bringing outside sponsorships, as it's much easier to fund individual players versus an entire team. Ryan adds some good insight to the conversation, citing how in other individual sports, payouts to players finishing just outside of first place help to support the format.
How I understand it to work with surfing, basically if you make it on the tour and you make it to the cut, you're getting what the equivalent would be to travel. So what it does is it allows people to add or put resources towards that practice side of things, which is sometimes driving 2 hours because you need to be sharp.
Oliver goes on to say that payouts outside of first place is something they'd like to work towards, and that this format is still in development. But this is exciting because it creates a new path for a potential life in paintball, a way to build your way up the ranks to compete with the best. And in less than 1 month, the paintball world will come together to watch the best compete. So let's take a look at the World Cup Pro Draw.
For the most exciting tournament of the year, the stage is now set. This season, Aftershock has proven themselves to be a high-caliber team. They sit 4th place in the league standings and must be considered a favorite to win this event. The Hurricanes, sitting 8th place overall, had a hot start to the season, but have somewhat cooled off. I believe if the layout is right, the Hurricanes could absolutely have a deep run on Sunday. The Bears, coming in at 14th, have been somewhat of a surprise this season, performing much better than expected. Don't be surprised if we see them finish top 2 in their bracket and make it to Sunday. AC Diesel continues to struggle. Having recently moved on from their head coach Ryan Gray, they assuredly are in a must-win situation now, sitting 18th overall. Ronhold Dynamite, coming over from Europe. They take a slot that initially belonged to the Lucky 15s. Dynamite has a 10-2 prelim record this season in the NXL Europe. Heading over now to Group B. Tampa Bay tops the bracket, fresh off a win in Chicago. They've gotten progressively better all year long. They've chosen the perfect time to get hot for a deep tournament run. Paintball Fit sitting 9th overall. An impressive first year in the league. Fit took 7th at the last event and hopes to continue their strong play at Cup. ASG Aftermath at 13th. They had a strong start to the season with a 4th place in Vegas, but since then they've been able to place no better than 14th. Make no mistake, this team is very capable of making a Sunday run. Austin Notorious sits just above the bottom at 19th. Some believe this team might have earned their pro spot too soon. They'll need strong play from players like Archie Barnes and Mark Franz in order to avoid relegation. Rounding out the bracket is Spider Fusion. Not much is known about this team besides being the Latin America champions. However, having looked over their roster, I'd be surprised to see them win a match in one of the most competitive years in paintball yet. Group C has Edmonton Impact topping the bracket. Always impressive, this team is playing excellent paintball coming into World Cup. Last year's runners-up, Impact is due for a win. The LA Ironmen have shown great improvement this season. While sometimes inconsistent, this greatly improved roster can absolutely make a Sunday run. Tied for 11th place is Infamous. Infamous remain consistent, making 3 out of 4 Sundays. Do not sleep on this well-coached team. The ML Kings sit at 17th. While definitely a down year, they'll hope to finish the season strong to end on a high note. At the bottom of the standings sits New York Extreme. Despite a talented roster, NYX has failed to recreate the success of last season. With the threat of relegation, NYX is playing for their lives at World Cup. While it may not look it, Group C is going to be a very challenging bracket. Look for the team that emerges to be a strong Sunday contender. In Group D, we have what looks to be the bracket of death. Dynasty tops the bracket, and after having missed their second Sunday this season, no team wants to battle with a motivated Dynasty. Baltimore Revo sits in 10th place with a 9-7 prelim record. They're one of only 9 teams with an above 500 record. Despite stumbling in Chicago, Revo always comes to play at World Cup. Blast Camp sits at 15th. After some believe this team didn't deserve to be in the pro ranks, Blast Camp has absolutely earned their stripes with an impressive first season. Look for Blast Camp to leave a mark at this year's World Cup. Under threat of relegation, Uprising came together in Chicago to secure a potentially season-saving 8th place. This team will not go down without a fight. The Tauntauns return to World Cup, bringing fans an exciting rematch against San Diego Dynasty. This team has powerful attackers. Look out for Axel Gaudin and Hugo Verrege. In the Champions bracket, we have 4 of the best teams in paintball. With a near perfect prelim record, Red Legion sits atop the league at first place. With players like Justin Rabikov and Alexander Berdnikov playing at the highest level, this team is an absolute favorite to win the event. San Antonio X Factor is another team due for a win. With 2 second-place finishes, they lose Axel Gaudin, but maintain an elite roster hungry for a win. Another roster hungry for a win is Houston Heat. Throughout the season, they've shown a consistent level of top-level play. With a roster full of veteran champions, this team is ready to win now. Rounding out the Champions bracket is Scalp. A new addition to the European Pro Division, Scalp dominated the league, going perfect through prelims and winning all 3 major events. It's worth noting they received elite-level play from American pros Alexander Berdnikov and Arturo Andrade. Scalp will be eager to prove that they have a roster that can win no matter the challenge. 24 teams will compete for the World Cup title. Let us know who you think will wear the crown.
For every event, we look at these brackets and pick out who we think will come out on top. In each event, there's a team that we look at and say, man, if they could just put it together, this is going to be a scary bracket. A team with world-class players and veteran leaders has the whole league wondering what's stopping them. Please join us as we take a deeper look inside the struggles of AC Diesel.
Let's head back all the way to May 30th, 2023, where Alex Rodriguez is let go from Diesel. After another disappointing finish at the Lone Star Major, Alex Goldman joins the Play the Game podcast and breaks the news. We would hear that ultimately, Mark Johnson made the call, but it was understood that the team had felt he wasn't a good fit and it just didn't work out with him there. This news would come as somewhat of a shock, as A-Rod has made a name for himself in the league as an elite killer. At this same time, Mike Hinman was set to be the new head coach, but this wouldn't last long. It's now been 2 events since the departure of A-Rod. In Philly, Diesel came together to make Sunday and place 8th overall. Things were looking up. But come Chicago, untimely injuries to both J-Rab and Alex Goldman would significantly hurt the team's chances. They would go 2-2 and just miss Sunday at 11th place. October 17th, 2023, on the Spick and Span show, Kyle Spica would announce that Mike Hinman would no longer be the head coach of AC Diesel. After a strong performance in Philly, and injuries clearly playing a factor to the team in Chicago, this was another surprising move for the team. A week later on the Play the Game podcast, Mike Hinman would join and reveal that during a phone call with Mark Johnson, it was revealed to him that some people couldn't handle his style of coaching and that the results weren't there. Mike would definitely have a reputation in the league as someone of great intensity with a tell-it-like-it-is coaching style. But to say the results weren't there is somewhat strange. Again, in Philly, they made their first Sunday of the season, and in Chicago, there were obvious injuries. Injuries to 2 starting players would hurt any team, never mind players of their caliber. Diesel still played well enough to make Sunday, and likely may have if it hadn't been for an X Factor impact match that seemed to be set up. Despite the turn of events, Diesel clearly had their 2 best performances with Hinman at the helm. At the 2023 World Cup, Diesel would yet again miss Sunday, finishing 14th with a 2-2 record. During the offseason, Diesel would add coach Ryan Gray to bring stability to the coaching position. but they would also release another star player in Justin Rabikoff. The team would later add Cody Mikowski to work as an anchor on the back line. Fast forward now to March of this year. At the conclusion of the first major event of the year, Diesel would finish 0-4, missing another Sunday. March 13th, 2024. Justin Rabikoff shares about his time with AC Diesel on the Play the Game podcast.
What Justin shares in this interview, I believe to be very important in understanding why Diesel has struggled these last 2 seasons. Of course, there was the period of instability with the coaches, but it was how we discussed the pressures that I find to be most telling. The initial pressure of simply being a team of this caliber, paired with the frustration of outcomes. This team hasn't been getting the results they wanted. They began to struggle with survivability. So now instead of playing to win, you're simply playing to survive under the threat of being verbally criticized by your teammates. So now you can't make mistakes, and the entire paintball world is expecting you not just to play well, but to win. From day one of this roster being built, I worry if this team hasn't allowed for themselves a healthy timeline in order for them to obtain success. Let's move on now to September of this year, 2024.
After the close of the Windy City Major, AC Diesel sits 18th out of 20 teams. September 23rd, 2024. On the Coaches Show, Ryan Gray announces that AC Diesel will again shake things up by releasing player Cody Mikowski and returning coaching duties to Mark Johnson. 1 week later, September 30th, 2024, Ryan Gray would join the Play the Game podcast and share some insights about why he was let go. The team believed that over the course of an event, he was unable to solidify the core 6 that should be on the field. Additionally, they believed his coaching style to be too coarse. This was similar feedback that Mike Hinman received.
In trying to understand the issues that have been plaguing AC Diesel, we must look at the signs of what they've been showing us. They let go of both A-Rod and J-Rab, both guys playing phenomenal paintball right now, so I doubt those calls came based off of their play. They let go of both Mike Hinman and Ryan Gray, both being criticized for having similar coaching styles, while also being told they weren't seeing the results. To which I have to say, I disagree with the notion that these coaches weren't getting results. Under Hinman, they had arguably their best performances, and under Coach Ryan Gray, Diesel was a -13 off the break before he started coaching. They're now a +6. On top of that, 10 of the 14 losses they had this season came by only 1 point, and that includes their one Sunday. Some of these losses came in overtime, some of these losses came to late game penalties. To me, this isn't a coaching issue. I believe it to be an issue of culture. And I think you can see this in the footage.
5 minutes left.
When watching Diesel games back, they're filled with individual play. A lot of it is highlight reel play, but it often comes from playing down in matches or in the wake of penalties. There's often an impatience in how they play, and that's because Diesel wants to win now. A part of the criticism of Ryan Gray was that they weren't getting better at the pace they wanted. They seem only eager to get to the finish line, which goes back to that pressure structure that J-Rab had mentioned. This does not seem like a culture built on positivity, growth, and trust. It seems like a culture of obligation. We have to win because we're supposed to win. I believe it was Alex Fragy that said this once, and it really stuck with me. He said, "We don't expect to win, but we know we can win." I think from Division 5 all the way up to the pros, there's a lot you can take away from that line. As a fan, I genuinely want to see Diesel win. And in the community, there's a ton of support, all hoping that we can see that victory. But there's a patience needed to do it the right way. And it's entirely possible they don't have that luxury. I hope this team can stick together because I believe we'd all love to see them become one of the next forces to be reckoned with. So I wish them the absolute best of luck at World Cup. If you enjoyed this team breakdown and would like to see more like it, please let us know in the comments. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to tune into Paintball Weekly.